In recent times, we've had very few success stories of great horror anime releases that truly resonate with the anime community. When a horror anime does release, typically it finds itself suffering from both generic stories and mediocre production. And honestly, just generally speaking, horror anime don't typically release at all, when considering the other genres that release each season. Serial Experiments Lain, or Cell for short, as many of you know, is not described and cannot truly be classified as a horror anime. However, the show itself carries a lot of horror-esque traits that can be carried onto future horror anime projects. The main selling point of Cell when considering horror anime is the effective usage of unsettling visuals and audio. Now, recent horror anime typically enjoy overcompensating with over-the-top violent visuals and incredibly loud and scary noises for their lackluster story and horror elements. Unlike the regular horror anime, Serial Experiments Lain is the complete opposite. Serial Experiments Lain's audio work is truly masterful in the way they create an incredibly uncomfortable and disturbing atmosphere. What Cell does best is weaving in moments within the show where the audio itself feels empty in a way. I believe the best moment to illustrate this fact is the kitchen moment in episode 8 where Elaine is talking to her parents. The scene starts out and ends with very minimal sound. We can hear the subtle buzzing noise of the television, Elaine talking, and some minor kitchen noises like the sink and the fridge. And that is essentially it. The reason why the audio in this moment creates an uncomfortable atmosphere is surely through the fact that the audio itself preys on the uncomfortable nature of silence with the usage of familiar noises in the absence of audio. Because there's a lack of noise such as background music or an abundance of environmental noise, we are able to hear little sounds that we're typically not used to hearing, but hear all the time. Things like the humming of a television or the subtle sounds of liquid when it's getting poured into a glass. All these noises that we typically zone out on our day-to-day suddenly get so much louder, creating the sense and illusion of emptiness and solitude. The best way to describe this feeling in terms of the real world is the feeling you get when you're in a room and all you can hear is the subtle ticking noise of the clock. When you weave these unsettling moments with the intense psychological moments within Cell, you create an atmosphere where the audience is consistently never comfortable and on edge. There's never really a moment in time where the audience can let their guard down, especially when the audio work is coupled with unsettling imagery. Now, where most psychological shows shine is the usage of disturbing and uncomfortable visuals. However, what Cell does best is creating fear and unease through absence and color. Cell visually can only be truly described as cold and unfeeling. The background to a lot of scenes of Cell typically lack life, with either the background being completely static and unmoving, or lacking in detail. In the background, there are typically objects rather than people, and when there are people, they are typically unmoving or incredibly undetailed to the point of silhouettes. Due to this absence of life almost, it creates a feeling of loneliness and unease from the audience. This is only intensified by the clever usage of color, where the studio opted to make the show with toned down and darker colors, along with intensifying certain things with colors such as the orange of the evenings and the darkness of the night, and the glare of the windows almost being completely blinding. Now, with these factors combined, such as the empty and lifelessness of the setting and the subtle differences and dark undertones of the visuals, it creates an overall feeling of hopelessness, unease, and of course, fear. And when you weave in these scenes with psychological imagery, it only heightens the fear factor and unease for the audience. The best way to describe this feeling when watching these Cell scenes and moments is the feeling you get when you stare at a liminal space for too long. There's a familiar yet uncomfortable feeling, like something is out of place or something's not right. The horror elements of Cell never seem to take away from the true intention of the show. They never feel disjointed or out of place due to the subtle usage of horror elements and the consistent uncomfortable atmosphere created by the subtleties that carry on throughout the show. Horror animes today typically opt to rely too heavily on the actual idea and premise of the show and the over-the-top horror elements. Serial Experiments Lain proves that you do not need a grotesque monster, zombies, gore, and jump scares to truly be horrifying. You simply need to stay consistent and create an atmosphere where everything just seems a little bit more disturbing.